Welcome to Spirit, Purpose, and Energy. I'm JJ Flazanes, your host, and thank you for downloading today's show. It's going to be a good one. And today's show is actually brought to you by whalewisdomretreats.com. Imagine 5 magical days immersed in the energies of the humpback whales and dolphins, experiencing an intimate and transformational connection with these very special beings. It's magical. Connecting with these wondrous spirits can be a profoundly moving, deeply healing, and life-altering experience for many people. And you are invited to join us on this heart-opening adventure that will touch your very soul to the core. whalewisdomretreats.com. I want you to go there and get your free Messages from the Sea guidebook, which is full of wisdom from the dolphins and the whales. If you've never experienced swimming with dolphins and whales, now I've done swimming with dolphins in the pool situation in different countries, and that's lovely and magical. And I've done the whale watching trips where the dolphins come to the side of the boat, and that's also great. But this takes it a step further. You are swimming with the humpback whales and dolphins in their environment. So you will figure out and find where to go on these trips, these whale wisdom retreats, which I haven't done one yet, but let me tell you, I'm going. So please go to whalewisdomretreats.com and get your free Messages from the Sea guidebook full of wisdom from the dolphins and the whales. And I'm super excited to be partnering with Whale Wisdom Retreats. whalewisdomretreats.com. Another announcement that I want to quickly make to you that I just keep forgetting from week to week is that I do coaching. I have lots of you reach out to me when you're ready and you ask about working with me one-on-one. I do both the physical training part as well as the emotional and spiritual training part, the astrological part, and the combination of all of the above. So if you need some help and you're looking for someone, whether it be from a therapeutic standpoint or from a life coaching standpoint or from a weight loss and health standpoint or even from a relationship standpoint, I can help you. Just come to jjflazanes.com, go to the programs, and then you'll find the Work with JJ tab, or just send me an email and I'll send you the link. All right. So I just want to make sure you guys all understand that I still do private coaching with people, because especially you as my audience, you've listened to these shows. You're halfway there. The conversation that we can have can take it to the next level because you're already pre-screened, because you're part of my tribe. So let me know if you end up emailing me that you listen to the show, and if you're interested in working with me for any length of time on any issue you'd like to have resolved. Now, today's show, we're going to talk about biomasculine engineering. We're going to talk about the 8 qualities that men need today to be successful in relationships. I met Ray Doctor. His last name is Doctor. I met Ray. He's a psychologist. He has a master's in counseling psychology and a doctorate in clinical psychology. He's conducted workshops and lectures in the United States, Netherlands, and Brazil. He has shared some of the same stages and panels with Marianne Williamson, Bruce Lipton, and Eckhart Tolle and John Gray. He's appeared on the E! Channel and HBO, and you may have heard him on LA Talk Radio or Talk America Radio. And you can visit his website. It's RAYDOKTOR.com, raydoctor.com. It's the K instead of the C, so raydoctor.com. And I met him actually at a party. A mutual friend was having a birthday, and we were all at a very loud restaurant with a long table full of lots of people that I didn't know. And I asked him across the table. We were sitting kind of catty corner to each other. I asked him what he did. And when he told me, I just got this wave of like, I think I want to interview him on my show. So I gave him my card and told him that I had a podcast and I really want to have more masculine energy representing the conscious man and representing conscious evolution of relationships from the masculine perspective. So Ray and I had a great conversation. I know you're going to love it, and I'd love to hear any feedback that you have. So make sure to check out Ray at the end of the show. And of course, I always encourage your feedback. So please reach out to me and enjoy today's show. Welcome to the show, Ray.
Hey, what's going on?
I'm very excited for us to have this conversation. I really love your work. I love what you stand for, and I'm definitely interested in sharing your masculine perspective with your background and with your education to reach more men, to make sure that women understand that the differences between men and women from your perspective and how we as women can help them. And then for those of you men that are listening, you probably want a man to tell you some of the stuff that we've been talking about for so long when it comes to relationships. So I'm really excited that we're going to have this conversation today. But I want you to tell people, because I know I read your bio, but give us a little bit more of a background, a personal story about how you even got into all the work you're doing to get your counseling psychology and your doctorate in clinical psychology.
Well, I grew up with a father who served the Marines for 30 years. He was in World War II, the Korean War, and the Vietnam War. And with that, I was exposed to PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. And so there was a lot of anger, violence growing up. However, in that also, my father also did establish a lot of healthy masculine roots. My father has never failed me. He's always come through. He's always been fair. He's always apologized when he felt he did something wrong. And he was just he had a very big heart despite this other part of him. In that also, growing up with him, that I noticed that how I grew up versus the other boys I was hanging out with. And I and my brother are the only ones who came out of a kind of, I guess you say, a bad neighborhood where we went to school, got educated, we followed our purpose and so forth. A big part of that was just how my father disciplined us, how he raised us, how he gave us responsibility, and he did treat me in many ways like a man. But before that, yes, I did like most people out there, struggled with relationships, went to therapy, traveled the world, learning different modalities, and then ended up becoming a coach myself. And that has been where I'm supporting more men and men in relationships. That means also couples. And that's where I am today, and have worked with over 6,000 people now, and looking to continue to just spread the work and the love out there so I can help more men. One thing that's interesting is that, a lot of men who are speaking up and feel marginalized, and I don't know, there's a lot of men who are upset with the whole Me Too movement and all these things. All these hot topics are coming up, is that I am not charged at all, meaning that I also don't feel diminished. I don't feel marginalized. I don't feel insecure. I don't have these experiences. And I think a lot of it has to do with how I was raised. Like, I feel confident in my skin. And so my work is really being able to help model that for men out there so they can show up. Because regardless of what's happening out there, what's more important is what's going on inside of you.
Absolutely. Well, do you think though, because I know I heard you say your dad and PTSD, and I did notice that you do EMDR, which is one of my favorite therapies to recommend to people. Do you have issues that you have healed through the therapies that you have done on yourself and with other people? Because I know for me, when you mentioned that you are unaffected, meaning not unaffected, but you're not triggered by, as a man, by the Me Too movement. For me, what I tell people is that true healing is when you're different in the same situation. So if you have something that triggers you and you can heal whatever is the root of that, you can stand in that same situation and be unmoved and be untriggered and just be calm and peaceful. So are there things that you've worked on in your life where maybe you used to get triggered and now you're healed?
Well, first off, I want to say that's awesome that you recommend that, because actually EMDR is the only technique that I recommend that maybe a traditional psychotherapist uses, because I find it to be the only effective one, because it basically incorporates the body, meaning it's somatic. So most therapies is talking, it's in the head. It's really hard to change the narrative when you do it only that way. With EMDR, I'm not promoting it. It addresses the body. It addresses what's happening inside of you, so you're not triggered. I just want the listeners to hear that way. If they're interested in that, what that is, it's an amazing technique. And yes, I use that technique on myself. I had someone use that with me. But way before I even got to EMDR, there's many other modalities I was using. And yes, I had a lot of stuff going on, and they're not there. The only times that if I have something that bothers me, it's nothing like from something my childhood or whatever. If anything, the only thing that's come up recently is that I have a son who'll be turning 4 in July, in that there has been moments where, like, for example, it was about 2 years ago, I don't know, it was actually around his birthday, and he was getting fidgety, and he just accidentally headbutted me. And when he headbutted me, all I saw was red for a moment. I felt my energy like quickly, like where I want to headbutt him back, which I would not, but it went through me in that moment. I saw my mouth go up a particular way that my dad used to when he would get angry. And I took a deep breath in and let that go. And I had a memory of my childhood for that moment and realized how wonderful it was that I'm able to have this experience and awareness of my son and a lot of things that my father was not able to experience and enjoy with me. So there's been moments of, if anything, for him, sadness, because I don't think he was so much in the experience when he was raising me as a child, because he was so caught up with other things happening. He was kind of more into doing and, survival mode, not really be able to be in the experience. And that's it. Otherwise, my entire childhood is gone.
Because of some of the work that you've done, or because
A
it didn't
lot
affect
of
you?
work.
Yes.
A
Okay.
lot of work.
And there's only two therapies I really recommend on this show. I shouldn't say that. There's two traditional clinical therapies that I recommend. And I've already done shows on them. And one is EMDR. And the other one for couples is also Imago. So, which I'm having Harville Hendrix on the show in a couple months, which I'm super excited about. And I know you do couples work and maybe you don't do Imago, and that's totally fine. But I am a big fan of EMDR, and also with you agree that it has to be connected to the body and that sort of nervous system when it comes to PTSD that doesn't, that we don't have that time in between. But the show's not about EMDR. This show is going to be about, I wanted to bring Dr. Ray on because he represents that body of work that is for men and focuses on men and gets women to help their men. And because in this culture, I think we still really aren't talking enough about, like, there's a lot of consciousness, a lot of meditation. And I've got lots of friends in this podcasting industry, in the fitness industry, in the wellness industry, and they're talking about it. But they're a small minority. And I feel like you can span a little broader audience of people who aren't necessarily looking from a health and wellness or weight loss or, body perspective. It's more for relationships. So I know that you have so many different talks and your product, and I love your program that you have called Biomasculine Engineering. That rocks. And I want you to tell us a little bit about that later. But tell us, and the listeners, some of those points, those key points. I think there were 8 things that men need to do or be or learn.
Yes, if a man wants to sort of basically be in a relationship today where he shows up, he feels attractive, he feels confident, he feels all these things to where, the woman's going to be attracted to him, he's going to have to embody these 8 things no matter what. And you want to get into a few of them and we just kind of go there?
Absolutely. Let's start.
Okay. Now, before we go there, the reason why this is so important and both men and women really, really, really need to hear this is this. So keep in mind, what kept us together in our culture, say 50 years ago, it was based off survival also. In other words, so for a woman to be single in the 1950s, she would not be necessarily supported by her culture. So part of the collective consciousness was that you need to be married. Also, that she wasn't working because women working were not looked at it or revered in a healthy, loving way. And so with that being said, is that a big part of why maybe men and women kept together back then was because it's just where we were culturally, whether we were ignorant, whatever, a lot of it had to do with survival, protection, all of those things. Including this, women couldn't really control their bodies. So if they didn't have the pill, and they were to go out and about and have promiscuous sex, then there's a possible chance that they can get pregnant. So women been able to do everything now to take care of themselves, their body and so forth. So in order for a man to show up today, and men, listen, they know this, a lot of men are complaining, they're afraid, whatever, I'm getting mixed messages. I don't know where to show up for her, whatever. Well, your power doesn't matter anymore. In fact, the power in which you perceived never was power before. And that might be your money or your status. There's women out there who have that same job position. It's no longer about how big you are and how muscular you are. There's women out there who know martial arts. And at the end of the day, it's like where a woman cannot protect herself and so forth. It's not, she doesn't need you to be a gorilla and pick up a rock for her. She can basically hire someone to do it for her. The list goes on of these very basic things that kept maybe people together or gave men more value. Why you should stay with a man. It's not that anymore. So the 8 things I'm going to bring up is utterly important. So you want to get to it?
Yeah, let's start with number 1.
Okay, the first one is emotional resilience. Emotional resilience. And that is where a woman can communicate with you without you getting angry, without you losing your shit, without you feeling as though that it's about you and taking it personally. You need to be able to hold space for her, especially if she's working and so forth, because she's at work. She's maybe in her masculine mode. She's working. She has to take care of things. Or it could be a woman also who has kids and so forth. And that at the end of the day, she maybe wants to share what's going on with her experience. You need to be able to be that container. So if you don't have a healthy relationship to your own femininity, meaning that you don't do self-care, you don't do this work, you don't understand what you're feeling, when your woman shares, you're going to be reactionary. And that is why most men will end up losing their shit because their nervous system is not trained yet to understand that experience. Whereas another woman can share that with another woman about her feelings, and it's just them connected. It has nothing to do with fixing if there's something wrong. It's just an experience of expression. So men need to develop emotional resilience. That's the number one one.
Okay, stop. We could do the whole rest of the show on that. So we're gonna, because I'm thinking about men that I know, and they're not a whole lot of them that are emotionally resilient. I mean, yes and no to certain degrees. Again, I'm in the space of health and wellness, so those guys definitely who practice meditation, and but that's also easy when you're not in relationship with them. It's easier to be disconnected and not take things personally. But when you get into relationship, I mean, really, when someone comes to you and you can see that the man is super triggered all the time, how do you coach them or guide them? And what do you tell them to do to become more emotionally resilient?
That's a whole nother program. Biomasculine engineering. I'm not playing with you. It takes work. If a woman were to share that with, keep in mind, people listen to us that I don't want to come off as sound like, I had these strict, archaic guidelines or whatever. When I talk about masculine and feminine essence, you could be a woman embody that in a healthier way than your man. What it is that if your man is emotional, he is in his feminine. So anytime you're going to, why are you doing that? I'll hold space for you. When you listen to him, you are moving into your masculine. It's going to depolarize the relationship unless you're okay with being a masculine woman and your man is feminine. So it's that balance. It's send him to a coach. It's send him to someone like me. It's whether or not he sees it as a problem, because a lot of men will say, you want to know if this is too much drama, and they leave or they ghost you. A lot of men don't get to that place because they get consumed and they lose themselves. They'll say, I don't want to go there. It's too much drama. That's why they want to have casual relationships, because they're weak in that department.
And how do you get a man who is weak in that department, who doesn't think that relationships should be that hard, who's got a lot of baggage, who does get triggered all the time? How do you, from a woman's perspective, or even from a man's talking to a man, how do you influence and inspire someone to look at it differently so it doesn't look like it's something that is just a lot of work with no payoff in the end?
I worked with a client today who is an amazing, attractive woman who has done a lot of inner work, and she started dating a guy who is doing his therapy, used to be overweight, still feel insecure about himself. And he said to her that, I just feel as though you're so much evolved than I am. You are. And he wasn't like trying to dump her. He was like literally at a really raw place and sharing his emotions and so forth. And she was the one that said, you know what, you're going to New York for a week and a half. Let's just take space. She was directing it and, holding that space and being more the masculine person. Okay. So this can trigger women, and I'm okay with it. I'm all about triggering so people can grow. First off, this might never, ever work for you because you're with a man who has a lot of challenges. And if he were an alcoholic and he were not to see it as a problem, then it's not a problem to him. So until he recognizes it as a problem, it's not a problem. That's number one. So there's a good chance you're with a man who's never going to change. And I work with women all the time to help them understand this and realize this. I've had women on a couch where their man starts breaking down and she puts her hands on his leg as if he were a child and starts coddling him. So it's the only way that a man would ever be ready for that is if he is maybe asking for it. Two, you use this language. I love you, and I know that you can be better. You might point out moments where he was confident. When you handle that situation at work, it turned me on. I know you feel good when you're that way, don't you? It's where you kind of allow it to be his idea. It's encouraging words for him to be able to connect to a state in which he knows he is his better version. However, if it's a man who's been playing victim most of his life. It's not a state he's ever going to get to until he maybe this woman leaves him. He goes through many more breakups. He has some other men say, dude, man, you're being this, that, you're playing it small, you're being a coward, you're much more than this. And he finally does the work. But it's a very fine line for women to be able to say something where it doesn't sound as though that she's coaching him and he doesn't get defensive. Because I know women are hearing this right now. They're going to go, I've tried it before, and he gets defensive.
Well, there's that balance of, as you said, that the men get triggered or they're not emotionally resilient, or I said that, but you have a woman who's done a lot of work and who is wanting to help. And so of course it does come across like coaching, and you have to realize that, for being a woman, we have our own stuff too, right? And so we're working on our stuff. So there's that place you have to get to be able to like work on all your stuff, to be able to do the best you can to support. But at that time too, it ends up becoming a little bit imbalanced. So anyway, we'll just send them to you. So we'll just take care of that. Do you also, I know you're in LA, we'll just send them all to you. Do you also do like phone coaching or Skype coaching as well?
I do mostly virtual sessions.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. Perfect. All right. So I'd love to keep talking about emotional resilience because I'm all about resilience in everything. And I think that is, again, true healing, and it's life, right? You have to be, resilience is what I think we all strive for just in life, to be able to ride the wave and enjoy our time here. Otherwise, if we take everything so personally and we're so wounded and triggered by everything goes on, that's just miserable. So resilience in general is just a great thing. Okay. What's number 2?
And by the way, just here's, outside of doing what I do as Dr. Ray, I also sing in an 80s tribute band. Okay. And it's pretty funny. I know this. So we are supposed to perform at this place, and it's where a bunch of our fans are, meaning that it will be the busiest night for this bar. We don't play bars often. We mostly play corporate gigs, and we play for the Rams. So we play at the LA Coliseum and the Rose Bowl. So we do really big gigs. For us to do a bar gig is us kind of like saying, okay, we're going to do this for the fans who, support us 10 years ago, whatever. Anyway, the bar owner, he said, yeah, when you come here, we have to pay you a lot more money, and then I have to hire staff. And I said, okay, I understand that. But you still will make more money. At the end of the day, it's still about, you being able to bring customers and so forth, right? He's like, yeah. I went, all right. So week goes by, and this happened just now, about a week, last night I get a text from him. I happened to yesterday send a text message, and I said, I had a thought. I said, how about would you be thought about hiring us one woman, because she knows everybody there and she has worked at all the bars in the area and she's really sweet. I go, I was just thinking it can help you save money. And she's really extremely fast. He text messages me this morning and says, how about I tell you what band members to play and not to? And he canceled the gig. He took it personally, as if I was telling him how to run his bar. Just threw in a towel. Like, here's a business owner who's going to make more money this night because he got his feelings hurt. Right. And I didn't tell him how to run his bar. I was actually suggesting, this is an example. Here, I don't have a relationship with this man. I barely know him. And here, he's not making a whole lot of money. And the reason why I'm bringing up this topic, because men have no idea how far emotional resilience can really carry you in all areas in your life.
Yeah, it's a good point.
And what I responded, I said, I apologize for the misunderstanding. You said that you needed help. I thought I'd help you out, blah, blah, blah. And I don't care who's right or wrong. Doesn't matter to me. No response. He probably maybe feels embarrassed or still wants to stay with what he was thinking. And here he's going to blow a really good night. It's okay. And so emotional resilience, what it does, it allows you to not get caught up in things and take things personally. It allows you to look at things objectively, consciously.
Yeah, I'm all about that. That's because that when you can do that, then there's nothing you can't solve. Communication has to have that in it. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, it's just a bunch of reactions. And we have to be able to take a step back and look at what we're doing. And like I said, we could continue on this literally first one for the rest of the show. But so let's go to number 2.
Next one is purpose. And purpose is how you show up, because a relationship will, possibly end. And you need to know what you're going to be doing the next day, regardless of what happens when things fall apart and so forth. In a way, kind of look at it as the movie, The Notebook. When the woman ends up going back to the man in New York, What Noah does is he goes ahead and he builds a house. That becomes his purpose. And that's actually how even she discovers him again, because there's this newspaper thing about him doing it and she reconnects with him. But the point is that you have something that you do that is just as important, or maybe even more important in a relationship. Doesn't mean you love your woman less. It's just that this is aligned with who you are. Life is going to change. It's going to change. Your woman's going to change. Who are you when your work is not there? Who are you when your kids leave? Who are you when things, people change? You can't control that. Purpose aligns you with that.
Agreed. And I think it's also important for women. And I think especially for women after childbearing years and when they get into menopause and their children leave their house, because I find a lot of women who are stressed out and bored and looking for something to do and restless after the age of 45, 50 years old. So I think for women, it's also equally important to know that you have a contribution that you can make as an individual that has nothing to do with your role as wife or mother or sister or daughter, and that connecting to that can bring a little bit more joy and peace and connection. So I would also say that purpose is as important, not as important, but almost, because they don't, there is children and that's fine for a purpose for a while. But once your children are grown out of your house, you have an identity separate from your kids. So I think purpose is a great one for everybody.
Absolutely.
So what's number 3?
Number 3 is kind of in line with that, and that is direction. And direction is that you know where, in a way that you direct that purpose, that you put it into action. And that's very attractive to women. So it's one thing to go, I now had an epiphany, but just sit there. Now it's like, okay, how are you going to direct it? What are you going to accomplish? What are you going to select as your priorities? So important and very attractive. And if a man doesn't have a direction, his woman, especially women today, is going to direct him, including the relationship. So you better have some type of direction.
I think that's pretty clear.
Yep.
Let's do number 4.
Optimism. At the end of the day, that I think we all agree that we prefer to hear someone who appears to be happy. There's challenges and so forth. A man who's always looking at things in a very pessimistic way, a man who looks at the negative perspective of something, a woman is not going to feel safe in that. And from what I experience with women, I might be making generalizations. Yes, I know I'm in Los Angeles, maybe around different women, maybe it's who I attract, but it seems as though that most women have a tendency to be compassionate. They want people to be happy and feel good. So if you are a man and you look at things from a darker perspective, your woman is always going to be one to lighten you up. And in that starts to become old. She doesn't want to come home to a stick in the mud.
Yeah. And and I'm sure it can work in reverse as well, but.
Oh, absolutely. It's opted. And these are like kind of more emotional based. They're more about your character, your being, your essence as a man or a woman. That's why I said these things it has nothing to do with the basic survival. It has to do with all about self-development.
Yeah. Which is where we're going. I recently purchased a book that someone had recommended about like sort of the new evolution of survival in relationships, that just like what you're talking about in terms of the new rules need to apply, because our parents and grandparents, like you said about survival, and I talk about that as well, like they weren't thinking about how happy they were surviving.
Exactly.
They weren't conscious of their thoughts or their feelings, and we want more now than we ever did before, because we have more than we ever did before. So now we're actually being present to that. And optimism is important, and cultivating optimism and looking at a bright future and being able to be a good problem solver and to figure things out and have hope. I mean, that's any relationship or even person needs to survive in that way and use these tools to survive. So, okay, cool. So we're on number 4 now. What's number 5?
Number 5 is accepting all relationships that have been challenging or that you believe you have been wronged. Because if you carry your baggage into your current relationship, it's definitely going to drown it. And that has to do also with your parents. A man who's come to a place where he accepts how his mother or father were or were not is definitely going to show up in a way where he can basically make a clearer decision and be more present with his current relationship. Many men, what they do is they just go from one woman to another woman to another woman and so forth. And what they're doing is they're repeating the relationship with what had happened with their parents and all their exes. Most men don't do the work. And a lot of women today will pick up on that. And if they don't, it's just that's what's going to sabotage a relationship.
All right. So I'm glad that you looped in the parents in that too. So let's say there's a difference between, because accepting sounds mental. And the reason why I'm pointing that out is because I want to bridge the gap of someone who can say, I accept this is how my parents were. But then for someone who accepts it, but yet has a lot of PTSD, what what makes or breaks that? Is it just about doing the work?
Absolutely. But remember, PTSD is something, it's like, it's not something that's basically integrated. So a person can actually have a healing relationship with their parents, but still be affected by how his father beat the shit out of him. Do you see the difference?
Yes.
Okay.
And okay,
Okay.
got it.
So yeah. So I'll use myself as an example. I have been way over my parents for a long time, my father and so forth. But as far as what would come up in reactions and stuff and relationships is something I still need to work out. And I didn't draw the connection with my father anymore. I drew the connection to more of how I perceive myself and my past experiences, including what was happening in that now moment. Does that make sense to you?
Yes, I got it. I
Okay,
got it.
yeah, I heard your mind kind of going where I was going with that.
Yes.
So in other words, the longer you hang, I'm glad you brought this up, JJ, because the longer you hold someone responsible for your well-being, you will not heal. Bottom line is
Well,
because what you're doing is that you as a person are creating the continuity, which actually literally creates the identity and your brain and the neurological firing in your nervous system to replay the same situation in that person as being responsible for your own well-being, meaning that you keep yourself enslaved by blaming someone else. But the moment you're able to accept circumstances as they are and be able to let go of that person and that identity, whatever you use as evidence, so hold that thing accountable for your trauma, whatever it is. As long as you do that, you stay stuck there. It's harder. So by being able to accept who has wronged you or past circumstances or unmet expectations that didn't work out, then you move into what's going on in my body, though, my biology. So you can now address, this is what happens when I'm in this situation. This is when I feel, it's no longer, oh, this is just like I didn't get hurt. I wasn't listened to by my father. It's more like, when I don't feel heard, I feel smaller. When my wife doesn't hear me, I feel smaller. Now you make it about you. Why would I feel smaller when I should just love myself anyway? And she is her own person.
right.
You bring it back to yourself.
No, I love that. That's the work of that I like to promote of nonviolent communication, even though
Yes.
I take it and kind of mush it around. Because while I think that Marshall Rosenberg's they wanted people to do it for other people and be empathetic first, I always say that how can you identify it in someone else if you can't see it in yourself? So I like to pull it inward because then when you can get your own needs met, you let everyone else off the hook, and it's a lot easier to come up with strategies to do that. So I get the accepting all relationships and then being able to again go inward, make it about you. And even though there may be still stuff there, because we have stuff and we're going to have stuff, but definitely.
I love your perspective on it and bringing your feminine perspective to Marshall Rosenberg, because remember, he is masculine, he's a man, and he's going to go into ways in which work maybe for him, or he thinks THINK that he can think his way into feeling better or make it better for others. But I think that's an amazing gift by women who can bring into the feeling factor, because at the end of the day, we really feel people. We feel people. And so it'd be one thing for a person to think this is how you should do it, but unless there's emotional resonance there, a woman's not going to believe it or feel it and so forth. So important.
I took a group of people to a nonviolent communication workshop, and it was one of those experiences where I realized how my brain worked differently because everybody's in this room, and I'd already taken this course a couple times, and I facilitated it here in Los Angeles and brought clients and friends, and I watched as it explained how the process of doing this, and I saw everybody look really confused, and I realized I realized that the way that it gets taught was, let's say, A B C to E F G. But
Mm-hmm.
how I just automatically rearrange it in my brain, I go, no, it's BCHGAE. And then I go, oh, right. But I don't tell anybody to do that. I wasn't even realizing that I was doing it because to me, in a different order, it was life changing. And it was at that moment that I realized I need to share this information in a different way because people are so confused about how they're supposed to look into assess and to interpret and figure out empathetically what's going on for somebody else. Yet most people can't identify half of that stuff within themselves. So I thought we need to bring this inward. So thank you for that. That's another, again, it's not really a therapy. It's just, to me, it's a process, and I deliver it in a real masculine way in a 1, 2, 3 process, but it's a very emotional process of doing it. You have to feel your feelings. You have to be aware and conscious of what's going on in your body and to be able to identify that. And that's not a thinking thing. That's a feeling thing.
Absolutely. And here's the thing is that all healing, all ALL, emphasize it on us, it is a process in which that the heart, literally, it has 40,000 cells that operate separately from the brain, meaning they can operate on their own. Neurosensorites, that's what they're called. Yep. Hopefully that's, I might be a little bit off, but it's neurosensorites. I think that's it. And basically that they harmonize the brain. So while you can have PTSD or you can have other challenges that you have there, it's when you feel into your heart, literally there's a vibration that's created, a frequency in the heart can soothe your brain and your entire experience and create new neurological pathways so you no longer have that trauma or challenge anymore.
I love that. That's perfect. Thank you for sharing that, because it makes the connection between the feeling part and the thinking part more important.
Yeah, and it doesn't, and you see but you need the thought also. So people ask, what is a feeling? Here's a great way to understand it. So just imagine you have basically raw emotions, and then you have thoughts. When you combine raw emotions with thoughts, what you get is a feeling. Okay, so that's what feelings are. So imagine my raw emotions. I don't know if they are. They might be. It could feel like anger. It could feel like sadness, but it's just energy that is filtered through my thoughts. What dictates my thoughts? Well, where I'm at consciously. So in other words, I could be in a group where I feel with a group of new people. Just say if I have social anxiety and I haven't done the work and I feel this raw emotion, I feel insecure, and it gets filtered into my thoughts. My feelings is this, and this is what I spew out, and I tell people, these people are just stuck up. This is why I feel this way, okay? That's because I haven't worked on myself. Now, if I've done some work, raw emotions come up. It goes through how I think, meaning that I combine it. They're combined together. My feelings might be this. This is unfamiliar territory for me, and getting to know people right now is just uncomfortable. I'm looking forward to learn and grow from this. Big difference.
Yeah.
And that's it. You change your perceptions. That's why all this work is done. It's because the thought is kind of like how you guide where it's going to go. So this is all important. How you think is just as important as what raw emotions are coming up.
Yay. Thank you for combining those for me. I also kind of agree with that and say that. And some people want to say, no, it's about the feelings anyway, so that's a great explanation. So I appreciate that. And before we continue on for the last 3 things here for men, I know you're Leo. Do you know anything else about your chart? Do you know your moon by chance?
Moon in Scorpio.
And your rising?
My Libra
rising. Okay. All right. Very good. We might have talked about that when I met you over a loud dinner at a birthday party, but cool. Yeah. I do a lot of astrology on the show. And so I think it's important for people to know. And for those of you that haven't seen Ray's picture yet, he kind of looks like Richard Gere. You're a younger version of Richard Gere. And I couldn't put my head around that when I met you. I was like, he looks familiar. Who does he look like? And someone else said it. And I went, yeah, that's what it is. You have that Richard Gere look going on. So
I've been told that since 1984.
Well, it's a compliment. He's an attractive man. So
yes, it was officer and a gentleman. My Mrs. Rosemary Romero. Mrs. Romero was my history teacher, and she kind of flirted with me, and she was really into Richard Gere. So that was the first time I had experience of a cougar.
Oh,
anyway, yes. But nothing went down. Nothing went down.
All legal.
Yes. Yeah.
Off board. Okay. All right. So let's move on to number 6.
Number 6 is not afraid of conflict. Not afraid of conflict. So that is the whole avoiding things. So the thing is, first off, it's changing your definition of what that even means to you. Meaning this, If your definition of something being shared with you is just an expression, there is not a conflict. Therefore, you're not going to retreat. Okay? Very important to hear that. Listen back to that again. If that didn't make sense, I'll say it again, is that unless you have a particular definition about something, you're never going to have feelings about it. So you're going to be neutral. But whatever definition you have about something, if it's negative, you're going to be triggered. So a woman expressing herself, or if you feel as though, for example, I'll tell you, I'll give you an example. Here I'm going to go on a date with my girlfriend Friday, and there might be something that comes up, and I might want to avoid what I call a conflict because I don't want her to not flake, but to maybe cancel on me, okay? But that energy will build up in my body, okay? The conflict, the idea is something bad can happen from that. From a feminine's perspective, is that they see that as co-creation. They would say that, how could I even go out if I don't feel good to do it? To them, that would be a conflict to their self. Whereas with men, we're focusing on the outcome. I don't want to say this because I want to get laid at the end of the date, or I don't want her to cancel on me. That conflict is within yourself. If you want to combine with women today, you have to, in a way, join them because they're trying to co-create. They're trying to co-create right now. In fact, sorry, I'm going there again. This Me Too movement, for the ones who are in the conscious department, I mean, I know that there are those who maybe are in the blame, anger, whatever, and they're expressing that's where they are, and I'm supporting them also. There's others who will say, we really are just trying to express ourselves because we want to create a new program of safety. We want to be able to co-create with men so we can go to a healthier place. There is not a conflict, but men avoiding that, your perception to that are creating a conflict. That's why many women also become more angry. And that's what's being created right now. That conflict, that's within yourself. There is no conflict. It's a co-creative process.
Okay. Conflict. Don't be afraid of conflict. And I love to tell people, and my favorite thing is conflict resolution. When you're good at conflict resolution, there's no need for ever to be afraid of conflict because you'll figure it out. You'll be able to say what it's really about. Again, that goes back to that Marshall Rosenberg work of nonviolent communication. When your needs are, this is a need that's not being met. This is my need. We can discuss it and then we can get our needs met. Everyone's happy. Conflict resolved.
Or like you say, you agree to disagree, but because you respect the other person, they're okay. You disagree with them.
Right. Oh yeah. I know even in my own life, I've had situations where I said, I'm willing to agree to disagree and move on. And people say, no, if you don't agree, if that what we're right and you're wrong, we want nothing to do with you. And I thought, okay, that's your choice. That's not my choice. And
that wasn't a conflict for you. That was a resolution for you to know that, okay, you trusted that.
Well, at what point you're not going to manipulate me into lying or being dishonest with myself so that you feel better because your guilt is relieved. So you don't want to be with me, that's fine, or whatever. But okay, so let's go on to number 7.
Number 7 is spiritual resonance. Spiritual resonance. And what that is that life is basically, we live in a very feminine universe. And what that means is all there is change. All there is expressions. All there is just the unknown. No matter what, it's the unknown. And from what I experience, many women, unless they're kind of so far into the masculine mode, are connected to that experience, that essence. Therefore, them finding God might be walking in a forest. Them connecting to who they are might be just sitting with their dog or cat. It might be just, it's life itself. And a man who's caught up with the more linear story, I would say kind of more structure and so forth, kind of very type A, whatever, you're going to struggle because things are going to break. Things are going to fall apart. When you have a connection to spiritual resonance, whatever that is to you, meaning that you could be a Christian, Catholic, you could be Jewish, whatever it is, but it's where you know that there's something greater than this, therefore you can put your trust in that, and that you're not trying to control things. When you have spiritual resonance, you feel more fun to be around because you, in a way, it goes back to the one thing I said, you're more optimistic. You go with the flow. And from what I experience with many women, that is why they'll laugh their asses off when they see their husband or boyfriend fall on their ass, when something breaks. They don't take things so seriously. They want you just to let go of a thing, to be things, to be playful and so forth. With spiritual resonance, it connects you back to who you really are, which is aligns you again back to also purpose, emotional resonance, optimism, and so forth. Kind of ties it all in.
Beautiful. And that's a great way to explain why in the past I have asked men to help me move. And I thought, oh, this is going to be fun. And they did not. It was so serious and so to the point that it was so unfun. And I'm like, well, like we have a job to do and we're going to get the job done. Why not have fun in the process? But it was so, I'm going to grunt through the whole thing. So, I mean, not that that's a small, minor action that I'm talking about, but if you can't do it there, you're probably not gonna be able to do it in more intense situations either, right? How you do one thing is kind of how you do everything. So,
Yeah, I want to emphasize on something like it's interesting in the movies you'll see where you have the type A lawyer or man who's always on the phone and working and so forth. That's changed now. Now that it's women doing that, and men seem to be kind of, I don't know, like marginalized again. Again, even in this new Star Wars movie, the men there, the men in the movies, the heroes can't keep it together. They're all over the place. But you have like the type of man who is the type A. He's kind of he's not spiritual, whatever. And then you have like the Latin lover. He's into emotions and he connects with you. He's sensual, whatever, and he plays a flamenco guitar, like these extreme archetypes. What I want men who are listening to us is to understand, especially if you're listening to me and you might be having some judgment, you're some dude from California, you're kind of in that hippy dippy stuff. Totally cool, doesn't matter to me. I'm very much into my business. Both men and women maybe would consider me very masculine, but I'm very playful, very playful. So none of this is really about changing who you are. This is about open yourself up to introduce other things into your experience to be fuller, to be fuller, to show up. And you maybe will never play the flamenco guitar, and maybe we'll never have that Antonio Banderas accent, but being playful, even as a man who likes to work a lot, it's a beautiful combo for women. They want to have fun.
oh, absolutely. And I would argue that really in our core, we all want to have fun. I mean, look at us as children. Everybody wanted to play. Whoever said, no, I don't want to play anymore. It's that we lose some of that in our purpose and in our passions and in our being adults and adulting. But I think you're right. And our essence is play and fun.
Yes, what happens for a man, though, is a little bit different, and this might be generalizations, is that keep in mind a woman in our culture today, still to this day, she could be jobless, and if she's semi-attractive, she still will score the man. It's just how it is, okay? Whereas with a man, it has been ingrained in us that men of power, of money, whatever, get the girl. You still see videos, it appears that way. So men, because I'm part of that, we're taught that, it's getting ahead. So regardless if they feel bad or they're having a good time, that they will try to think themselves into success or a happy relationship when they're not happy themselves. It doesn't make sense. So, but it's that they're trying to become better and feel empowered by the doing rather than the being. Whereas what I recognize with feminine people, because sometimes there's feminine men that way, but let's just say women, I think they enjoy life a lot more. They're able to connect to the beingness of all things. Even my friend Mina, who I would say is a very balanced woman. She has a masculine side. She has a VA working for her who does the majority of her work, so she can go to workshops and enjoy life. She was saying, Ray, even when I sit on the couch and I'm doing nothing, there's something passionate about that moment, and I experience life to its fullest. And so it's a beautiful experience. I mean, it's why we're here.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I'll take the compliment for the women that we want to have more fun, and we sometimes are able to do that. So I appreciate that. Thank you. And let's move on to the last and final number 8.
The final number 8, it actually basically encompasses all of these, and it's probably more of what you need to do, but who knows? It's retrain your nervous system. Retrain your nervous system. And a way that you retrain your nervous system, first step in that is to calm it. And that is most men and women, but we're talking about men here, their nervous system is overstimulated. And I'll give you an example. So it is that experience where you get a text message from your woman who's asking about plans, and you interpret it as a constraint, as more work. Oh, I got to respond to her. God, this takes too much work from me. And yet you take a nap or you get relaxed or something, you look at it and you experience the text message as if she's eager to spend time with you. So if you're overstimulated, you perceive all things as if it's not cooperating with you. That's a big thing. That's why you'll see men get very defensive. Like, for example, I shared in this call about the man where I sent the text message. He probably has forgotten about the conversation about him saying what he needed to do to have my band perform at his place. And I met that man about 4 times. He always looks stressed out. He looks just like he's not having a good time. And so he maybe interpreted this as something working against him, rather than me saying, hey, I know a woman there who knows about 50 customers who can help you. And this also happened with a coaching friend of mine also, who actually coaches a man who is not practicing what he preaches. And that is where he always was asking me about relationship advice, always with his woman, always just kept going. And it's where it was a very one-sided relationship. And I said, I'm not going to say his name here, but I said, so-and-so, I go, all I do is keep handing you Band-Aids. Have you thought about maybe really working on this part of your life? Because it's showing up. I can see where I says, I'm not going to prospect you. I go, I don't need your money. I says, but you're my friend. I feel like I'm doing a disservice if I don't share this information with you. I said it as delicately as that, saying that I love you. I'm here to support you. He heard the message. He responds he's like, I can't believe he got defensive. And then sure enough, I left the message in a very loving way, almost what I'm sharing like on this podcast. I said, it's interesting that you heard us as against you when I was supporting you. I said, I'm curious why you would go there. Sure enough, he was having problems with his girlfriend's kids. He was going through challenges. He apologized. He said, I get into fights with my girlfriend, the same situation, even with my daughter. I said, well, you're now talking to a dude where you have a close relationship with, and I'm calling you on your shit. What are you going to do about it? Because you can't interpret information from a loving place because you're overstimulated. You need to retrain your nervous system so you see things as cooperating with you, not against you.
Beautiful. I love it. So now we've got everyone's palate wet and they're like, how do I do this? Where do I get more? How can you help me?
Well, there's many ways to do that, but the easiest way is just go to my website. Should I spell it out?
Sure.
So my real last name is Doctor. It's spelled with a K, D-O-K-T-O-R. My full name is RAYDOKTOR.com, raydoctor.com. You can send me a private message there, but you can also download a book there called Your Relationship Blueprint. And if you're listening to this later on, it's not there, I'm sure there'll be some other free giveaway. But the Relationship Blueprint actually gets into how you've been programmed to think the way you do about relationships, work, and so forth. In other words, JJ and I have been talking about trauma. We've been talking about emotional resilience. We've been talking about different things. And all of us probably, I know some people claim they had the perfect childhood, but I've never met anyone who has, okay? You have been influenced by social media. You've been influenced by how you should look by social media and so forth. So we all have insecurities. And depending on that, that's how your life is now shaped. And the Relationship Blueprint, it's a very short read. You can probably do it in 30 minutes. It even has an exercise in there to understand how you've been programmed, about the indoctrinations from religion to whatever else, to breaking it down in very simple steps to kind of open it up to shift your perspective, to start learning how to have emotional resilience, how to retrain your nervous system, and many things I've mentioned here, because this doesn't just apply to men, it does apply to women also.
Beautiful. I love it. And everyone check out Dr. Ray, RAYDOKTOR.com, right?
Yes.
Okay. Check it out. Get the free Relationship Blueprint and ask him to work with you if you are feeling called to it. I know I've had different men on the podcast, but I don't know that I've had one that has sort of spanned the relationship and the EMDR. Can you do EMDR with people virtually?
Yes.
Oh, really? Oh, that's awesome. Okay, good. So anyone anywhere, if you've heard that EMDR show and I tell you to go find somebody local, well, forget that. Use Ray. So because it's such an important part of therapy for most people to really make, I think, big strides very quickly in your responses and in your retraining your nervous system. So we will have Dr. Ray back. I appreciate your time and your expertise and your influence and your inspiration. For all of you ladies who got a lot out of today, please share it with your men. And those of you men who've listened, please, I'd love to hear from you. I always appreciate all of the things I hear after the show. And I do appreciate that you downloaded today's episode. So thank you, Dr. Ray, for being here.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me. It was fun.